let's talk about one of the most pivotal years in all of modern history, 1944. This was the year the tide of World War II really, truly turned in Europe. It's when the path to victory finally became clear, but it was also a year of unbelievable violence and absolute desperation. So let's dive into how it all went down.
I mean, it's a huge question, right? A war on that scale doesn't just stop. It's not like flipping a switch. It's a messy, brutal, complicated unwinding. It's an avalanche of battles, collapsing armies, and just total political chaos. And for the war in Europe, that whole unwinding process, it really kicks into high gear in 1944. This was the year the fate of the Third Reich was basically sealed, even though the fighting was still a long, long way from over. And it all kicked off with one gigantic, unbelievably audacious operation.
June 6, 1944. This was the big one. The Allies launched the largest amphibious invasion in the history of warfare. I mean, can you imagine? The entire world was holding its breath as this direct assault on what was called Fortress Europe finally began.
The official code name for the whole thing was Operation Overlord. The goal? Well, it was simple on paper, but just monumental in reality. Punch through into France, secure a foothold, and open up a brand new major front against Germany. This was the moment the entire strategic map of the war was about to be completely redrawn. And this, right here, this was the absolute nightmare scenario for the German high command. You see, they were already dealing with the Soviet Union, which was just relentlessly pushing and grinding its way from the east. Now, with Operation Overlord, Germany was caught in this colossal two-front squeeze. It wasn't just a problem, it was strategically fatal. Every single soldier, every tank they sent west to fight the Allies was one they couldn't send east to stop the Soviets, and vice versa. Their resources were stretched way, way past the breaking point.
When you apply that much pressure from the outside, things start to break on the inside. And that summer of 1944 is when the Nazi regime really began to crumble under the sheer weight of its own failures.
It's honestly stunning how fast everything started to happen. In June, you have D-Day. Then, just a month later, in July, a group of high-ranking German officers literally tries to assassinate Hitler. I mean, that tells you the regime is rotting from the very top. That same month, halfway around the world, Japan's Prime Minister Tojo resigns as the losses pile up in the Pacific. And by August, Allied troops are marching down the streets of a liberated Paris. The momentum was just unstoppable.
And this quote, wow. This tells you everything you need to know about the Nazi leadership's mindset at this point. As Paris was about to be freed, Hitler's order wasn't to mount a strategic defense. No, it was to burn the entire city to the ground. Just destroy it. Thankfully, the German commander in Paris disobeyed that order. It really shows this shift from a goal of conquest to one of pure, nihilistic destruction.
So, facing total collapse on every front, what do? Well, the Nazis turned to technology, hoping for some kind of miracle. They started unleashing what they called Wunderwaffen, or wonder weapons. And honestly, these things were terrifyingly advanced for the time. The V-1, you could think of it as the world's first cruise missile, a pilotless flying bomb. Then you had the V-2, the first ever long-range ballistic missile. It could hit London from mainland Europe in just a few minutes. On top of that, they rolled out the first operational jet fighters, which were way faster than anything the Allies had. And their targets were mostly civilians in cities like London.
But here's the crucial thing to understand about them. These weapons couldn't actually stop the Allied armies. They weren't going to win the war. They were terror weapons, plain and simple. They were designed to inflict pain and suffering on civilians, basically out of pure spite. They were the weapons of a power that knows it's losing.
But even with the end so clearly in sight, Hitler had one more card to play, one final, desperate, all-or-nothing attack planned for the Western Front, an offensive that would absolutely shock the Allies.
Yeah, you can almost feel the shock in those question marks, can't you? In the dead of winter, 1944, Germany launched this massive surprise counterattack right through the Ardennes forest. They caught the Allies completely off guard. And it would go on to become the largest and bloodiest battle the United States fought in all of World War II.
The goal was just incredibly audacious. They wanted to punch a huge hole right through the Allied lines, drive a wedge between the American and British forces, and then capture the vital port of Antwerp. Hitler was hoping this would shatter the Allied coalition, and maybe, just maybe, force them to negotiate a peace. It was truly the final, desperate gasp of the Nazi war machine.
But look, the story of 1944 isn't just about the big battles and grand strategies. While all this epic fighting was going on, other things were happening. Darker things. The world wasn't just at war. It was going through this profound and often horrifying transition.
This is just a chilling, awful detail. As the Soviet army was closing in from the east, the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, ordered the destruction of the crematoria at Auschwitz. They were trying to destroy the evidence of their industrial-scale mass murder. Even as their entire world was collapsing around them, a top priority was trying to hide the truth of the Holocaust. And then, amidst the sheer scale of the war, you have these countless personal tragedies. The disappearance of Glenn Miller. I mean, he was one of the most famous musicians on the planet. It really brought the human cost of the war home to millions of people. He was just on his way to Paris to play for the troops, and his plane simply vanished. It's a stark reminder of all the individual lives that were lost in the vastness of it all.
So as 1944 came to an end, there was no longer any doubt about who was going to win. The writing was on the wall. But as the world was about to find out in the brutal first months of 1945, the real question was, what would be the final horrifying cost of that victory?